from Scuderia Audio, and today I have something new to show you that I've been working on for a while and that I'm really excited about. Let me first just give you a little bit of history. As of February 2018, I've sold a staggering 150 car audio systems for Ferraris. I mean, never in my wildest dreams did I envision being able to manufacture and sell that many systems worldwide. It's been so cool. Now, having said that, I still have many 360 and 430 owners call me and say, Mike, you know, I've got the Hi-Fi system and I'm a purist and I want the car looking as stock as possible, so I don't want to swap out my OEM cradle for one of your larger cradles, and I don't want to swap out my OEM speaker box for one of your larger speaker boxes. So what do you have for me? And I didn't have an answer. You know, I mean, I would go into the fact that I'd say, you know, by the time you find an amplifier with sufficient power to power a decent car audio system, it's too big physically to fit inside that cradle. And as far as the OEM speaker box goes, I mean, it was designed to hold 5¼ inch speakers. I mean, where are you going to get bass, real bass out of a 5¼ inch speaker? Well, some advancements in technology have been made just recently that have allowed me to put together what's probably going to be the most ultimate upgrade imaginable while still keeping those OEM units. Okay? So, first let me start with the amplifier and the cradle. Okay? If you're watching this video, you know very well what this is, right? This is the amplifier cradle that sits underneath the dash of your car. And it kind of sits up at an angle, right? The little pins go into the bottom of the transmission hump, and then a screw goes through here and goes underneath the dash in the center. And it just sits there like an angle. It sits there at an angle, and it holds the Ferrari booster, or the Ask booster. And this is the Ask booster, right? They're about $1,500. It's 60 watts, made in China. It has this big Molex plug in the back that makes it real easy, right? There's a mating plug on your harness, and you just pop it in there and you swing it in and it clicks right in. Well, I mean, let's be honest. Everybody knows that this is just a cheap piece of crap booster. It only has 60 watts, and it really doesn't give you good sound quality at all. But what are you going to do? Right? You can't find anything larger than this that has a decent amount of power. Well, I bought one of these used. I took it apart and I started looking at it. So let me get my driver. This is exactly what we're going to do. I'll show you what's inside here. Forgive me, I'm trying to get over a cold. Okay, all it is a circuit board with a bunch of capacitors and some surface mount components, basically booster electronics, right? 4 transistors. And this big plug, which one of my customers calls the big scary plug, so I thought that's a perfect name for it. So you have the big scary plug that gets soldered right into the circuit board, and that's all it is, basically, right? I mean, the circuit, the circuit board is proprietary, but the big scary plug is not. You can get these. It is an easy, and this heatsink you can buy also. It's fairly easy. So what I did was, to start with, I found a product that was released that won the, let's see, what is it? The European Image and Sound Association's Product of the Year in 2016. It's made by a high-end car audio company called Mosconi, and it's a little amplifier that's basically the size of a package of cigarettes. And it's called the Mosconi Pico 2, right? It's a high-end 200-watt stereo amplifier. It's Class D switching, which makes it very cool, very efficient, very expensive, but it has built-in crossover. Now, albeit the crossover is fixed at 80 cycles, but that's perfect for our application. So I got to goofing around and I took the circuit board out of the Ask booster just to see if one of these little Pico amps would fit inside this housing. And sure enough, it did. In fact, I got 2 of them to fit inside this housing. So what I did, this is rather ambitious, but it's pretty cool. I contracted out an electrical engineer here in Silicon Valley with a 25-year career in audio circuitry and design. And I contracted him to design a circuit board with the exact same dimensions as the one in the Ask booster. But what we did was we mounted 2 of the Pico amps on the circuit board, and then he designed all this different circuitry in there, and he made the edge of the circuit, I mean, I'm not an expert, but he somehow made the end of the circuit board to fabricate the same big scary plug. So what we basically came up with is this super amplifier, right? It's a super version of the Ask booster. And I wanted to call it the Bad Ask booster. I thought that was pretty clever. But one of my other electrical engineering friends, who's also an attorney, said, you don't want to go there. Just don't use Ask anywhere in the name. So I'm just going to call it the SA400, the Scuderia Audio 400 watt amplifier. So let's take a look inside this bad boy. You see that? It's 2 Mosconi Pico 2 amplifiers shoehorned in there with a bunch of different circuitry. The same big scary plug, which is all fine and dandy. I just black anodized these heat sinks, right? Use the same end plate on this side, and then I had to contract a sheet metal shop to fabricate some special ones for this side because this has some more features. Right, you see there's these little slide switches. This is a prototype. I won't get the silkscreen versions for a couple of weeks. Excuse me. But you see there are slide switches here, and then there's some RCAs. So this amp will work with the OEM stock Ferrari head unit with the high level outputs. It'll work with an aftermarket head unit with single low level outputs or single high level outputs, and it'll work with an aftermarket head unit with dual low level or RCA outputs. In other words, you output the highs and you output the subs. And then you just flip these switches to whatever configuration you want. You plug the RCAs right in the back here, and that's it. Now, if you just have your regular OEM Ferrari head unit, you don't have to mess with the switches, you don't have to mess with the RCAs. You simply unplug the booster and plug in this one. Same plug, same ears, mounting ears, everything. It couldn't be easier. And you've just gone from a 60 watt booster to, if you think about it, most late model passenger cars now have stock radios with more power than that, to a high-end 400 watt monster amp. I mean, people are going crazy over these things. I can't make them fast enough. Now, on the other end, right, I mean, what's good is having all that power when you're running an OEM speaker box with basically one paper-coned 5 1/4 inch full-range speaker. I mean, again, let's be honest, it's the cheapest speaker known to man, and the second speaker isn't even really a speaker, right? It doesn't have any magnet, no power goes to it. They call it a passive radiator, and technically it is a passive radiator, but that's just a fancy word for it's just a round piece of paper that kind of vibrates, right? So you're not getting anything. Well, there's another high-end car audio company that I'm sure you've heard of, Focal. In fact, most of the mid-range and tweeter sets I sell for the 488s, 458s, 360s, 430s are Focals. Everybody loves those. Well, they came out with this, when I was a kid, if you said 5-inch subwoofer in the same sentence, everybody would say it was an oxymoron. But today's technology, they found a way to make it happen. They have a true 5-inch subwoofer, okay? You can put 150 watts of these things and it'll go down to 50 hertz. Of course, they're crazy expensive. They're $500 a piece, but they are insane. This thing is really, really heavy. It's got a huge voice coil for its size. Now, the only thing is that the bolt pattern for this is not the same as the bolt pattern on your OEM speaker box, right? These have 4 brass threaded inserts, which is fantastic, but you know what you're going to do. So, like my dedicated mid-range and tweeter sets, I designed these stainless adapter rings. Just like my mid-range adapter rings, they're stainless steel, they're laser cut, they have stainless fasteners TIG welded onto the back of 4 of them, and then the other 4 are just plain holes. So what you do, you just put that on there, and the kit comes with these fasteners. And you just take these machine screws and you just tighten down this adapter plate to the box, right? And then the remaining 4 holes with the nuts TIG welded to the back, you just take your new subwoofer, you just stick it in there. They give you this nice grill ring that fits right over the sub. So you just bolt the whole thing in there. It takes 2 minutes, and then they give you this nice black grill with acoustically transparent material, and you put it on there, and it just looks like it's made for the car. So between the Scuderia Audio SA400 amp and this Focal subwoofer kit, literally in 10 minutes you've just upgraded your car to this monster killer car audio system, and it looks exactly the same as it did before, totally stock. So what we're going to do, we're going to go out to the shop where I have just the this OEM subwoofer box, so I can show you how to remove your OEM speakers and install the new subwoofers. And then I also have one of these cradles with the booster mounted inside, so I can show you how to remove the booster and then install the new amplifier. Okay? Well, let's go play with the gear! Okay, so I'm going to try to stay out of the way as much as possible, but you'll see just how straightforward this is. So we just get in there and remove the OEM plastic rings. Huh. Look at that. The passive radiator is completely separated. You know, actually, this happens more than people think. You know, you won't hear a difference in sound, right? Because it doesn't do anything. It doesn't have a magnet. It's not hooked up to any power. But that's okay. We are going to fix that. So, we'll just remove these guys. Of course, the bolt pattern is the same for these guys as is the enclosure. So they'll bolt right to the enclosure. Man, there's a lot of sticky. Oh, my goodness. It wouldn't be a Ferrari without sticky parts, right? Oh. you know what? A little bit of the sticky got on the leather. Let me just... There we are. Good to go. All right, so we just get our stainless adapter rings, right? 4 of them have the stainless nuts TIG welded to the back, and the 4 of them are just regular holes. In fact, these holes are a little bit bigger because this plastic enclosure isn't exactly precision crafted. So you just put the fasteners through the regular holes, right through them, and into the little threaded brass inserts in the sub box. I looked for a little driver this size so that I could speed this up by using my little electric powered drill, but I couldn't find one in this size, so I just borrowed one of these fasteners that come with a radio controlled helicopter. I'm a big RC helicopter nut. If these would have been actually showing anywhere, I'd have them black anodized, but you're never going to see them. All right, get our little monsters. The grill ring snaps right into place, right over the sub. With the adapter plates, it's a perfect fit. Little fingerprint. And then you get these are pretty cool looking acoustically translucent material with a plastic honeycomb. They just snap into place. I like this all black stealthy look. I mean the silver ring on the OEM, I don't know. Some people like it, some people hate it, but I think this all black stealthy look is pretty pro looking. Oh, there we go. You can hear it snap in when you do it right. And that is it. It's the thing of beauty. Now you have some serious bass. With ample power, you have serious bass. Okay, so I'll try not to block the camera, but this couldn't be easier. There's 4 Phillips machine screws that hold the booster in. And remember, since it's the exact same footprint and everything, it's just a bolt in, bolt out procedure. Now, if you haven't watched the section on how to remove the cradle from the car, I'll do a quick review. It's super easy. You could basically do it blindfolded. It's kind of like, it sits like it leans, right? And there's one Phillips screw that goes through that little ear with the hole in it, and it goes straight up into the underside of the dash, right? So you just get your Phillips screwdriver, right? If I'm going to simulate this right, it's got to be going the right way. You just take the screw completely out, and this will fall down. Now, it's not fastened in the back per se. There's just 2 metal pins that stick out the back of this into 2 holes that Ferrari drilled in the top of the transmission hump in the back. They're just guide pins that stick in those 2 holes. Because if you think about it, if the pins are through the holes, it's not going anywhere, and it can't slide out because this screw. Right, so all you do, you take the screw out, this falls down, and then you just take it and you just simply slide it out about 2 inches until the pins clear the hump, and then you basically just have it to work with, and then all you have to do is just reach back here and put your thumb on that little tab, and then you pivot the plug. This is the plug that is part of your car. I bought this whole harness for testing purposes. So once you have this out, right? You see, there's just 4 Phillips screws that hold this booster in there. So you just take them out. Lift this out. This thing is really flimsy. All right, so you lift it out. And you take the 400 watt amp, drop it in. Put the 4 screws back. Take the plug. Let me see if I can zoom the camera in a little bit. Right, so you take the plug, and remember it pivoted out, so you have to pivot it back in. You have to take that little hook part. I mean, you'll figure it out. It's pretty self-explanatory once you see it. You take the hook part and you hook it under that little ridge, and then it's basically self-guiding. You just pivot it, and you just press it with a good amount of force until you hear it go click, and then it's in. And then you just put it back, and you stab those 2 little pins into the 2 holes, lift it up, put your Phillips screw back into the dash, and that's it. Okay, well, that's about it. Now before I go, let me just answer a few questions that folks have been asking. The first one would be, how do I get the cradle out so I can swap out the amp? Well, I have another video that shows how to do that, but honestly, it would take you longer to go find the video than it would be to just listen to me explain it. It's so easy, right? I mean, there's two steel pins in the back, and there's this ear in the front with a hole in it. And all Ferrari does is they drill two holes in the back of the hump so that you take these pins and just push them into the holes, and that kind of locks it in place so it doesn't shift around on this side. And then you just prop it up, and they just took a Phillips screw right through this hole and just bored it right into the bottom of the dash. So all you got to do is take a number 2 Phillips screwdriver, take this Phillips screw all the way out, and when you do that, this thing will just flop down a little bit. And then you just grab the whole thing and gently pull it straight out towards you about an inch until these pins come out of the holes, and then that's it. It's out. Now, of course, the booster is going to be, bolted in there, and you've got to take the harness out of the booster. And the way you do that, there's this little clip on the right side. You'll see it. It kind of hangs out a little bit on the right side. And you just take your thumb or your finger and you just push on that clip away from you a little bit, and you'll hear it go click. And then you'll see the harness end start to pivot. It doesn't come straight out because on this side there's a hook that hooks into here. It's a pretty clever design. And you'll see it, as soon as you unclip it, it'll start to pivot a little on its own. Well, you just grab it and you just pivot a little more until this hook clears this part of the fastener, and then it just comes right out. Right? And then you just swap out the amp. When you put it back in there, you just grab the harness side of the plug, grab the hook side on the left, hook it in there, and then it'll start pivoting. You just pivot and you push it in, and you'll hear it go. It's pretty loud. It'll go click, and then it's in, right? And then once you do that, all you got to do is just line up those two pins with those two holes, and then just push it away from you about an inch until it won't go anymore. Prop it back up, and put the Phillips screw back in the dash. That's it. Another question was asked was, do I have to go into the trunk and turn off the main power supply to swap out to take this plug on and off? Well, no you don't. I mean, obviously the engine can't be running and the key can't be in the ignition. You got to make sure the key's out of the ignition, and then there'll be no power going to that harness. Another question along those lines, people have asked, are the amplifiers fused? Is there an inline fuse? Well, yes. The big scary plug, remember, which is the same exact plug in the old and the new design, has a fuse in it. That's part of the circuitry. Right? The electrical engineer made sure that it was part of this circuitry. And these plugs are pretty cool. They're bulletproof. They're crazy expensive. They're about $75 a piece. And folks have looked for these. I spent months looking for these, and unfortunately, I realized that in order to get these, I had to make a minimum $5,300 minimum purchase and a 21-week lead time from Tyco Electronics. But I'm even thinking of making some adapters with the big scary plug on one end and just raw wires coming out the other end. So if people wanted to put another brand of aftermarket amp in there, or like maybe my big cradle with my ARC audio amp, it's a lot easier to hook up with this adapter. So I digress. Yes, it's fused, and the electrical engineer did the calculations, and he said the size of this fuse is fine for the 2 amps. The last question: do you have to take the OEM speaker box out of the car to replace the speakers? Nope, not at all. I mean, you saw me do it on my bench in my shop, right? But that was just so I could show it in the video. But it could just as easily have been sitting in the car. It's real easy. Okay, well, have a great day.